this is the final act of the Tempest. And we've kind of had it set up all along for this to be, and I'll just type it into the chat box too, but this is, you know, a lot of people who were probably watching this at this time were probably expecting this to be a revenge play where something bad was done to Prospero 12 years ago. And so all this time, all of the different machinations, everything that Prospero and his fairies did under the direction of Ariel is intended to get back at and punish the people who did the bad things to him and get revenge. And I have to say that the true, just a second, I have one person who's trying desperately to get in here. Let me get her in, okay? Hold on for a second. I'm going to pause it. Okay. Okay, so she's not here yet, but I sent her the link. So hopefully you'll see her soon. We'll see. Let me do this back. Is that play? Are we recording? Okay, it looks like we're recording again. Oh no. Okay. Let me see if I can get. Oh, now it's darn. It's not letting her into that meeting. Let me see if I can find. I don't know how to let them in because the meeting's already started. This is really irritating. Let's see if she gets that one. And hopefully she can get in. I just can't. We're already in a meeting, so they're wanting me to start a new meeting. WebEx makes no sense. So is this still recording? Yes, it's still recording. Okay. So thank you for your patience, y'all. So we had, okay, so now, Jordan, this is really important because the truth is I'm sure there are people who looked at this ending and said, oh man, I thought, you know, here Antonio, he was a jerk. And in fact, he was a jerk. And then Sebastian was a jerk, and he was encouraging Sebastian to be a jerk and kill Alonso, the king. Essentially, these two people after 12 years had learned nothing, and they're just still Mr. and Mr. Ambition. And so, you know, in America, you know, think about like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of any of those kinds of, you know, like Rambo and those kinds of American movies where, you know, they do him wrong. Okay, John Wick is probably a lot more, up to date than Rambo and Sylvester Stallone. But John Wick, you know, they kill his, they essentially destroy his life and kill his dog, and he goes out and kills hundreds of people. And so Addie, like, yeah, let's kill him. Okay. Well, the truth is, Addie, you are not alone. So a large part of this population, the people who are watching this play at this point, are probably expecting Prospero to A, either kill them, the people who were against him, or B, leave them on the island forever. Oh, you left me on the island? Okay, so it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So this is revenge. That's why I say this is patterned after a revenge play. And I'm going to take Ferdinand with me. Ferdinand and Miranda are going to go become king and queen of Naples, and my allies, I will become the Duke of Milan again, and my brother and Alonso the king and his brother are all going to end up on the island stuck with Caliban. And I'm going to escape, and they're going to get what they deserve. So people are, this is kind of the base culture. If bad stuff happens to us, we want to get revenge on the people who did it to us. Okay. This is not what this play is. Remember, if this is, coming out of the mind of the author, and this is his last play, this is his last hurrah. When you die, when you're done with life and you're done doing, the last thing you want to do is leave bitterness behind. You don't want to have that bitter taste in your mouth, like, ha ha ha, I got them. You essentially, and this is what the playwright's saying through the process of this last act, you want to find closure. And the only way to find closure is to find forgiveness. It's not to find revenge. You can kill all the people you want. You will never be happy. You can destroy bad people who are set on doing bad things no matter what. Like Caliban he ends up staying on the island. He gets to rule it all he wants because there's nobody else there. But he doesn't belong in the civilized world because he cannot be better. That's what, at least the assumption of this play, because he's, Sycorax and a demon or whatever, but he cannot. But see, the truth is, and this is what Prospero understands, at least it's taken him 12 years, but this is what he understands. And this is what the playwright understands. It's not just, the Bible, a lot of those things that are written in the Bible are also written in the Quran, are also written in Buddhist teachings, are also part of Confucianism. They're also part of so many other faiths, because forgiveness is not for other people. Forgiveness is for ourselves. We don't forgive people because they apologize or because they do restitution. We forgive them because we choose to let the anger and the resentment and all that other stuff go and not hold on to it. So even Prospero, he has been here for 12 years on an island, and he has made the best of it. And he has raised his daughter to be a sweet girl. He has not raised her to do evil. He has not raised her to hold anger towards all these other people. He has not. We'll see. This is my student still trying to get in. I don't know what to do. Yeah, you guys type, because I don't know what to do about this poor student. But the truth is when we forgive stuff, and I'm sorry for the delays, I'm just trying to interface with that student, but when we forgive what other people have done, not based on what they do to make it better, but we forgive them because we understand what was motivating them, and yet we choose to let it go. That only makes our lives more peaceful. It only makes us more at peace. It makes it so we can go on. Instead of feeling about revenge, 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 and all this anger, we let all of it go, and we can live our lives happily and not based on what happened to us once. And the truth is I think a lot of people think, well, the only way that I can forgive something is if they apologize, make it up to me, blah, 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 blah. And that's really not true. We use that as an excuse to not move on. but it's we should not live our lives up to whatever they do and their choices. Our lives are up to our choices, and we can choose to let all of that go. It doesn't mean we let them do it again. You notice that Prospero does not allow Antonio and Sebastian to hurt Alonso and commit the same crime that they did before, or even worse. He doesn't allow that to happen. He will not allow that to happen. He will not trust them probably ever again, but he has forgiven them what they did to him 12 years ago. And he's not out for revenge. He's out for essentially to be restored to his position. That's all he wants. And so this is where we go from this point on. This is really, and it's a moment, it's not really something that he just decided on. It's a moment that has been in the process this entire time. He has been moving towards forgiveness all this time. That's why he didn't hurt Ferdinand. It's why he didn't allow Alonso to be murdered. It's why he didn't do more harm to all of the other people. It's why he didn't want a hair on anybody's head on that entire ship to be harmed, because he's forgiving all of them. But he wants his place in the world again. Well, and the truth is I think that's true. We hurt the other people too, but the truth is our other people may not get to where they can change. And we have to let that happen. We can't determine what anybody else does. The only thing we have that governs everything is ourselves. So we can only affect our own actions, not anybody else's. So we have to choose to allow people to be who they are, and then we decide where the boundaries are, and we decide who we trust. Again, we decide who we spend time with. And so it's unlikely that Prospero and Antonio are going to be fast friends for the rest of their lives, go back to be the brothers that they could have been. But Prospero's not going to put him in jail and have him executed or anything like that. So yeah, let other people be themselves. The truth is we may find out eventually that we are wrong. And so we have to assume that we don't know automatically more than everyone else. That's where hubris lies. So humility actually is what it requires to give forgiveness. You have to be humble enough to say, look, I know you did me wrong, but that doesn't make you a person that's just evil. I know you disagree with me, but that does not make you, demonic. It just means we see the same thing differently. And that's a hard thing to do. You have to, set your pride down at the door to be able to do that. Yes, Jordan. Okay, so Prospero says now we're getting to the end of his travels and the end of this journey that he's been on, and his project, as he puts it. So he says, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, and time goes upright with his carriage. So things are going exactly the way they're supposed to. How's the day? And Ariel says, on the 6th hour. At which time, because remember he said it was going to be in the afternoon. At which time, my lord, you said our work should cease. And he said, that's true. I did say that when I first raised the Tempest. How are the king and his followers? He says they're all confined together in the same fashion as you gave in charge. All prisoners in the lime grove with which weather fens your cell. They cannot budge till you're released. So they're trapped. Kind of the same way that, remember, Ariel was trapped in the tree by Sycorax. The king, his brother, and yours abide all three distracted, and the remainder mourning over them. So they're all kind of facing what they've done. It's hard to know, because originally he says it's 2 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock we're going to be done. But he also says, I'll let you go in 2 days. And so we know, like, there was that one night when, the first day, everybody fell asleep, and then Sebastian and Antonio were going to kill the king, and that didn't happen. And then they said, well, then tonight for sure. And so it's honestly, it's all kind of amorphous. We don't know how much time has passed. They're not really clear about now it's sunshine, and now it's nighttime. They're not really telling us. But probably, I would actually guess that it's the next morning. But I don't know. I don't know that it really matters. In Greek theater, everything would have happened in a day. But even if they say something is going to happen, like in A Midsummer Night's Dream, everything's supposed to happen in a night. And yet then it says a week ago, at the end. And we're like, what? I thought it was in one night. And so time is amorphous. And honestly, in the Renaissance, nobody cares. So, but we do know that they've passed some time sitting here being stuck. And everybody kind of mourns over them because they know that they're all kind of weighing what they've done. And remember, that was what was told to them, that this all happened because of Prospero, because of what you did to him. And now your son is gone, and Alonso, because of what you did and stuff like that. So and it even says, the good old Lord Gonzalo, remember the older man who was the good dude, his tears run down his beard like winter's drops from eaves of reeds. Your charm so strongly works them that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender. Right. And it's, think about too, there are so many like magic worlds we've been in where um we have, time doesn't matter. I think about Percy Jackson and the Olympians and how they thought they were doing, um, they were only in the casino for like a few hours, and really it was like weeks or days, and time just flowed differently. I think even, what's the word, like Inception, they play around with time. And so, each time they go into the next dream state, everything goes slower and slower. And the same thing happens in Interstellar. These other worlds, and because of the way they're traveling at the speed of light, time goes more slowly. And so, do you see what I mean? So all of that happens, the time is amorphous. But again, magic has an effect on this. And so they think, well, it's only been an hour, but really it's been a week. And fairies can mess with all of that as well. Yeah, it's a great movie. It's smart. Okay. So now we get to the part, essentially he said, now and this is really important. So this is Ariel. So he says, okay, there's the good Lord Gonzalo. His tears run down his beard like winter's drops from eaves of reeds. Because your charm so strongly works him that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender. And Prospero looks at him and he goes, do you think so, spirit? And Ariel says, mine would, sir, were I human. So Ariel is a fairy. Fairies don't feel things the way that we feel things. They don't cry and mourn over stuff. They don't have the kind of sympathy and empathy that are typical in humanity. And Prospero, but yet Ariel is smart enough to realize that a human would feel remorse, and a human would feel empathy and sympathy for the people who are grieving, even though they've done him wrong. And it's funny because right at this point is where Ariel gives Prospero a little bit of a push. And essentially, if you saw them, your affections would become tender. You would no longer be upset with them. And he says, do you think so? And he goes, that's what would happen to me if I were human. Yeah, and the truth is, yeah, I mean, Alonso is changed. He does feel remorse, mostly because he has lost his son. And yet the other two men really don't. But do they end up staying on the island or killed? No. And that's where forgiveness comes. It's not a matter of, oh, you've done the right thing, and so therefore now I will forgive you. You've checked all the boxes. And so that didn't happen. So, but Prospero says, he listens to Ariel. Remember, Ariel is his slave. He is a fairy, but he serves Prospero. Prospero has only given him orders up to now, and yet he listens. He says, he asks him a question, Ariel answers him, and then Prospero accepts it. He says, and mine shall. This, in my opinion, is the climax. This is the moment when Prospero realizes Ariel's own life worth. That Ariel may be a fairy, but he is a living being. and also that Ariel has the same affinities, even if they're lesser because he's fairy, that humans do. And he recognizes that Ariel sees something that adds dimension to his own sight. That Prospero can step, and this allows Prospero to step beyond, oh, I'm going to have revenge, and make it very clear that this is the choice he's going to make. He is going to forgive them. So, and his intention becomes absolutely clear right there. It's not a dramatic climax where everything falling into place and, oh my gosh, it's not, you know, a bomb not going off or going off or something like that. It's a very small line. And he says, you hast thou, which art but air, a touch, a feeling of their affliction. So you sense it. Yeah, I like a quiet climax. And shall I not also, one of their own kind, a human being, have that relish all as sharply, passion as they, be kindlier moved than thou art? He says, if you feel for them, then I would definitely feel for them. Though with their high wrongs I am struck to the quick, yet with my nobler reason gatest my fury, do I take heart. So he's saying, okay, I understand. I'm still upset that they did these things to me. I'm still wronged, but my reason is taking over. And the rarer action, this is important because remember we were talking about forgiveness, the rarer action in virtue than in vengeance. So yes, it's let's all go Rambo, and most people will be like, yeah, but the better road is to forgive instead. So, you know, it's almost like the road less traveled, if you want to think the road not taken, you know, the one that was less traveled, you know, that kind of thing. But he says, they being penitent, the sole drift of my purpose doth extend not a frown further. So go release them. My charms I'll break, their senses I'll restore, and they shall be themselves. And this is the shift right at the beginning of Act 5. Now Prospero says essentially he's kind of talking to the fairies. And this whole last bit is him saying goodbye to what he has known, to the magic island that he's been on. And that's why I say this is a really great play for the end of a poet's, you know, a person who's been a playwright for years and years and years and written all sorts of plays. This is a great ending play. Like, okay, all the magic stuff I'm laying to the side. And it's all ending. All of these, I'm going to say goodbye to all of these spirits. I'm going to say goodbye to the island. And so even all of this amazing stuff that's happened, he says, graves at my command have waked their sleepers, oped, and let them forth. So I've been really amazing. You know, I've brought the dead back to life, or, you know, but this rough magic I here abjure. I'm letting go of it. When I have required some heavenly music, which even now I do, to work mine end upon their senses, I'll break my staff. That's like breaking the wand in Harry Potter. Bury its certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book. I will get rid of the magical elements that allowed me to do what I have done for so long. And so here come all the people. And then, so all these, you know, the regular courtiers with Alonso, and then they all enter the circle which Prospero has made, and there they stand charmed, which Prospero observing speaks. And he starts to talk to essentially talk to them by name. He talks to Gonzalo first. You are spell stopped. Holy Gonzalo is, you know, so they're all standing there just kind of dumb, unable to talk. And he speaks to Gonzalo first. And of course, now Gonzalo was the good dude. He's the one who gave him the magic books to take with him. He's the one who gave him food and water so that they would survive the trip over the sea. And this is really important. And in some ways, he's establishing, hey, all of the reason all of this stuff happened is because of me. And yet I'm going to deal with each of you separately. And yet he essentially establishes that I'm still in charge. You know, I'm the one who's kind of over all of this. So, oh, good Gonzalo, my true preserver. And again, he was loyal. He was great. I will pay thy graces home both in word and deed. So he deals with him first. You were awesome, Gonzalo. Good boy. And then switches to the king. Most cruelly didst thou, Alonso, use me and my daughter. Thy brother was a furtherer in the act. So Sebastian helped as well. Thou art pinched fort now, Sebastian, flesh and blood, you, brother mine, that entertained ambition, expelled remorse and nature. So he's saying Sebastian and Antonia were the most at fault. Because he named Sebastian, Alonso, you did wrong. Sebastian, you did wrong too. And you were also complicit in it. And then flesh and blood, that's his brother Antonio, you did it horribly. And with Sebastian, you would, and he reveals the plot to kill Alonso. You would here have killed your king. And he says, I do forgive thee, unnatural though thou art. In other words, he's not saying, but then you made it all up, and then you had remorse, and you blah 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 blah. Nope. You are unnatural, and you did wrong, and you did evil, and you have not repented, but I forgive you anyway. And that's essentially, he's sort of passing judgment, and yet really he's just saying, I see you all for what you are, and I will reward Gonzalo because he was great, but I will forgive the rest of you. And now he says, not one of them that yet looks on me or would know me, Ariel. Fetch me the hat and rapier in my cell. So he's putting on his old clothes. I will discase me and myself present as I was sometime Milan. So he said, let me get my old clothes back on. We'll take off the robe that I use for magic, and we're going to go back to being Prospero. Does that make sense? And so Ariel starts singing and puts his fancier clothes on, the old clothes. And he says, why, that's my dainty Ariel. And he even says, remember, he's going to leave. He says, I shall miss thee, but yet you shall have your freedom. And although I don't know if any of you were actually thinking, like, did you wonder, is he actually going to let go of Ariel? Is he going to release him and really let go of all this magic? Because it's a hard thing to let go. This is a lot of power. And he says, so to the king's ship, invisible as thou art. And he says, go to the king's ship now, wake up. You're going to find the mariners asleep, and then wake them all up and bring them here. And Ariel's like, okay. And he takes off. And Gonzalo, everybody's still, of course, freaked out. Well, but then here comes Prospero. He says, behold, Sir King, the wronged Duke of Milan, Prospero. And he embraces the king. And to thee and thy company, I bid a hearty welcome. Well, it'd be nice if he could see Ariel again. It's funny because a lot of people believe that spirits can't cover, like the tradition about fairies is that they, and ghosts especially, have trouble crossing water. They can be in water, but they can't, if they were there, that's where they are, but they can't, like if there's a river, they can't cross the river. Even going over a bridge is hard. So because it just, the river dissipates it or does something to them. I don't know, but who knows? It would be cute if Ariel just come by, like, Peter Pan comes and visits, But Alonso says, he can't believe it. Whether you be he or no, beest he or no, or some enchanted trifle to abuse me as late I have been, I do not know. So he doesn't know, are you real or is this like another enchantment? And since I saw thee, the affliction of my mind amends, with which I fear a madness held me. So in other words, now I feel like I'm sane again. The dukedom, and he says, thy dukedom I resign, and do entreat thou pardon me my wrongs. So he asks instantly for pardon. Yeah, Ariel does. Ariel's really the cool one in this. If I were to play anybody, I'd want to be Ariel, but I'm too old and creaky for that. Okay, so, but how should Prospero be living and be here? How did you even get here on this island? And he says, well, I'll explain, but first let me embrace Gonzalo. And then he welcomes Sebastian. Essentially he welcomes all the other courtiers, and then he says aside to Sebastian and Antonio. So this is just between him and those two people. He says, but you, my brace of lords, were I so minded, I here could pluck his highness frown upon you and justify you traitors. At this time, I will tell no tales. In other words, I know that you guys were both plotting to kill the king, and I could tell you right now if I felt like it. And Sebastian's horrified. Oh my God, how does he know that? And he says, the devil speaks in him. And he goes, no, for you, most wicked sir, whom to call brother would even infect my mouth, I do forgive thy rankest fault, all of them, and require my dukedom of thee. So he says, I forgive you for all the bad stuff you did, but I'm going to get the dukedom back, and you must restore it. And Alonso says, if you, that's the king, of course, not his brother, if that will be as Prospero, give us particulars of how did you survive? And he says, how did you survive this when we have lost everyone, including my dear son Ferdinand? He says, I'm very sad for you, like not telling him the truth yet. And Alonso says, irreparable is the loss, and Patience says it is past her cure. In other words, that we will never find him. He's gone. And I says, I rather think you have not sought her help, of whose soft grace for the like loss I have her sovereign aid, and rest myself content. In other words, you say, Patience says it's Pastor Carey. He goes, I don't think you've actually talked to Patience, who's been my friend, because he waited, what, 12 years for this, um, revenge / reconciliation. And he says too, he says, for I, the like loss, I have her sovereign aid and rest myself content. In other words, I lost my kid too, but I'm content. And he's like, what? Alonso's like, you're happy? You lost your daughter and that makes you happy? You like the loss? And he goes, oh, he says, it was great to me. It was just as huge as it was recent. And yet, why is he not? Why is he not upset? For I have lost my daughter. And he says, when did you lose your daughter? And he goes, in this last Tempest. Now he's joking because he lost his daughter because she found a guy. And so she's not his widow girl anymore. Exactly. And so he's not unhappy about it because he likes Ferdinand and he thinks that their marriage is going to be great. And so he's kind of joking with it, but he says, I understand this loss. He says, but please know for certain that I am Prospero, that very duke that you worked against, that you put in a boat and who was most strangely wrecked upon the shore and became the lord of the shore. So, but he goes, come on, let's see my cell. And why is he bringing him to his cell? To see and be reconciled with his son. Yeah, losing, exactly. He says, I will requite you with as good a thing. Since you're going to give me my dukedom back, I'll give you something you want too. At least bring forth a wonder to content ye as much as me, my dukedom. Probably more, actually. And opens the door, and there Ferdinand and Miranda playing chess. And she's mad. She's like, sweet Lord, you play me false. She's like, oh, you're cheating. And he goes, no, I wouldn't cheat. My dearest love, I would not for all the world. She says, yes, you would cheat. And I would call it, fair play. And then he's like, what? Oh my gosh, wait a second. Alonso thinks it's just a vision, that this is not his real son, and he's going to lose him all over again. Like, this gives him hope that's going to be bereft once he finds out that this is fake. Sebastian calls it a miracle. We'll see. I don't know how miraculous he really sees that to be, since, he was next in line if Ferdinand's dead. And Ferdinand comes out and says, though the seas threaten, they are merciful. I have cursed them without cause, because he thought his dad was dead. And so this is great on both sides. Yeah, it is funny. Here's Caliban's trying to kill Prospero, and then all these other people are trying to kill each other, and then all this grand stuff is going on with fairies, and they're just playing chess. Well, what else do? It's like kids, dramatic stuff is going on, and how are you guys doing? Whatever, so they're teenagers. It's just boring. But anyway, Ferdinand's happy to see Alonso. Alonso's absolutely happy to see his son. And then Miranda comes out, and this is the other, and in fact, there's a novel based on this called Brave New World. It's actually a really good novel too, about genetic engineering, essentially a world where everybody they're all in these classes of people, and they're all like clones. It's a fascinating book, I have to say, though. It's called Brave New World. I think it's called by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley. And so she says that, oh wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is. Remember, she's only seen her dad and Caliban. So now she sees Ferdinand. She was told Ferdinand was ugly, okay, but he's not. And then she's just like, wow, everybody is so pretty. And they're wearing such pretty clothes and everything's so pretty. Because, she's used to being out in the jungle. So, what would she know? And Prospero says, well, it's 'tis new to thee. You haven't seen people before. And Alonso asks, who is this woman? You can't have known her 3 hours. So now, are we on the same afternoon? We were talking about time. He says, well, how long have you known this chick? 3 hours? Is she the goddess that hath severed us and brought us thus together? So he thinks because she's beautiful. And he goes, no. She's a woman. She's mortal. She's human. But by immortal providence, she's mine. I chose her when I could not ask my father for his advice, nor thought I had one. She is daughter to the famous Duke of Milan, of whom so often I have heard renown, but never saw before. So he doesn't even know that Prospero is the Duke. And so, he didn't. But he had never heard of this. And he says, never seen him before, of whom I have received a second life and second father, this lady makes him to me. They're just adorable. They're so sweet. You pray that the innocence continues, that they get to go off and be sweet king and queen together, because there's too much machination going on with the other groups. And Alonso is just like, wow, I am hers. In other words, I'm her father now. But oh, how oddly will it sound that I must ask my child forgiveness. And that's because if she's his daughter now, remember they had all the wedding ceremony stuff. If she's his daughter, then he did his own daughter. He put her in a boat and chucked her off to an island. And then Prospero says, there, sir, stop. Let us not burthen our remembrance with a heaviness that's over. In other words, let's not bring up the past. Don't beat yourself up over it. So Prospero really is forgiving people for this. He forgives Alonso. You don't have to, thwack yourself on the back over and over again and punish yourself over something that is past. And you've already asked for forgiveness. Gonzalo chimes in and says, I have inly wept or should have spoke ere this. So he's been speechless for this. And remember how he could talk in the previous scenes. And he is just amazed that all of this has happened and that this couple has been put together, and that things are, they're wrapping up in a nice bow, really. And it's so weird. He goes, it's so weird because I never thought, here's Milan, the Duke of Milan, chucked out of his throne, and then his child becomes the wife of the King of Naples someday. This is astonishing. Like everything that was taken is being given back. And he says, in one voyage, did Claribel find her husband in Tunis? Remember, that's the wedding that they came from. And Ferdinand, her brother, found a wife where he himself was lost. Prospero found his dukedom. And all of us found ourselves when no man was his own. And so it's like everything's like nice and tidy. And Alonso blesses the marriage. Yay. And Gonzalo's all happy and stuff. And then Ariel comes in with Master and Boatswain. And so they see, oh my gosh, there's the whole crew on the ship. Right. And you want his daughter to have a happy marriage. He doesn't want his daughter married. Notice how he waits for them. Will Miranda fall in love with Ferdinand? Will Ferdinand fall in love with Miranda? Will they prove themselves to each other? Because he doesn't want an arranged marriage that's just so that he can make an alliance. He wants his daughter happy. And that's very different from the norm. No, he didn't. If anything, he kind of put impediments there to see how they dealt with those and was it going to survive a test. And the truth is they both were willing to sacrifice for each other. They were both very kind to each other. They were both nice. They're just nice people, which is so weird considering all the other people who aren't so nice. Okay, so everybody's all happy. The boatswain even says, by the way, the ship's in great shape. We can totally leave whenever you want. It's as tight and yar and bravely rigged as when we first put out to sea. And Ariel whispers in Prospero's ear, that's what I did. Remember, I told you I didn't hurt the ship. And Prospero, it gives him, oh, my tricksy spirit. You're such a good spirit. Pats him on the head. And Alonso said, how in the world did that happen? And the boatswain said, well, we were all sleeping. And then even in the dream, we were divided. And, so somehow we were carried here by sounds. So the same thing, all this little music playing, and then the growly sounds and the roars and all these weird noises, and people are being guided all over the island. This is all the spirits. And Ariel wants, of course, of affirmation. Was it well done? He goes, excellent. Bravely, my diligence, you shall be free. And Alonso is still kind of like freaked out about the whole thing. He says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about how strange it is. That's what Prospero says. He goes, I'll explain everything. Until then, just be cheerful and think of each thing well. Just be positive. And then Ariel says, we need to talk to Caliban and his companions. Untie the spell. And so that's the last bit. Stefano, Caliban, and Trinculo, the dorks who were the comic relief, come in. And they're, of course, still drinking, but they've also been bitten and chased around and tortured and all this other stuff. And so they're all just kind of like a little messed in the head. And he says, essentially, Caliban says, oh, Setebos, these be brave spirits indeed. How fine my master is. I'm afraid he will chastise me. So he's like all freaking out. And Sebastian says, what things are these, my Lord Antonio? And Antonio says, he goes, and they're of course joking about the plain fish. There's the fish thing comes. Caliban, I mean, I've never seen Caliban portrayed like a fish looking sort of something, but it's just a matter of time before I see that. And then Prospero claims what they've done. He essentially says, this misshapen knave, that's Caliban, his mother was a witch, and one so strong that could control the moon, make flows and ebbs, and deal in her command without her power. These three have robbed me, and this demi-devil, that's Caliban, had plotted with them to take my life. Two of these fellows you must know and own. This thing of darkness, acknowledge mine. So in other words, this brat, Caliban, is my brat, and then those two brats are your brats. And the gig is up. He tells everybody this is what they were planning. They were going to take all my stuff, and they were going to take my life. That's their plan. And Caliban just looks at everybody and goes, I shall be pinched to death. He's like, crap. Now I'm going to be punished. And Alonso says, is this not Stefano, my drunken butler? So now we know what Stefano was on the ship. And Sebastian says, he's drunk now. Where did he get the wine? And Alonso says, and Trinculo is reeling ripe. In other words, they're both toasty. They both got the 3 sheets to the wind or whatever it is that, I don't even know all the expressions. They're fairly turnt, as somebody in the South would say. And first of all, how did you get the liquor? But how did you came in this pickle? And pickled is being used as a joke, that they've drunk so much that they've actually pickled themselves. And Trinculo says, I've been in such a pickle since I saw you last. And then he goes, I was so afraid. And Sebastian's like, what? And Stefano says, don't call me Stefano. I'm not Stefano, but a cramp. So he hurts because of all the torture stuff that was happening. And so they both, they, of course, they've been off getting bites and cramps and being kind of tortured. And Prospero looks at Stefano and says, you'd be king of the isle? And he says, I should have been a sore one then. In other words, he's kind of learned his lesson. And Alonso says, dude, I've never seen anything like that before. And that's, I mean, this is my translation into modern teenage speech, I guess. This is a strange thing as ere I looked on. That's what he's saying. He's saying, what is that? And Prospero says he is disproportionate in his manners as in his shape. In other words, he looks hideous, but he is hideous, inside and out. And then he tells him, go to my cell. And this is to the king. Take with you your companions as you look to, no, this is Caliban. He's talking to Caliban and saying, take your 2 twits with you. And as you look to have my pardon, trim it handsomely. He says that I will, and I'll be wise hereafter and seek for grace. And this is usually a really funny line. People laugh because he says, what a thrice double, and I'm not going to name it all, but was I. He's saying he was a goofball and a twit to take this drunkard for a god and worship this dull fool. And everybody laughs because, yeah, he was stupid. He shouldn't, and he deserves to be laughed at because because Stefano had wine, he thought he must be a god. And that's absolutely ridiculous. And so now Prospero says, okay, now your highness and your train, all the people with you, let's go into my cell where you shall take rest for this one night. And I'll explain everything that happened, the story of my life and the particular accidents gone by since I came to this isle. And then in the morning, I'll bring you to your ship and then we'll go to Naples, where I have hoped to see the nuptial of these, our dear beloved, solemnized. In other words, we'll have the non-fairy wedding with a priest and stuff like that in Naples. And then I will go back to Milan, where every third thought shall be my grave. And then he knows he's not going to live a whole lot longer. It doesn't make sense for him to not be an older man. So I've seen him really well acted. The first version of this I ever saw was spectacular. The man, he was also the director, but he was Prospero and he was fantastic. Okay, so Alonso says, I long to hear the story of your life, which must take the ear strangely. So it's going to be a weird tale, but I want to hear it. And then he says, he turns to Ariel and he says, Ariel, chick, that is thy charge. So in other words, all that's left is make sure that we've got winds to take us off. He says, then to the elements be free and fare you well. Please you draw near. And so he's like, once you've gotten us off the island and you've sailed us off in a great direction with a nice wind, then you're free. And then the very last bit, this is usually spoken by the highest ranked actor who's still alive. It's not always done, but in this case, Prospero's not quite the highest, but he is kind of king of the island, so maybe he takes rank. So this is really a very famous speech. It's not as famous as like To Be or Not to Be in Hamlet, but it's still, it's the goodbye speech. And it really is an epilogue. It's spoken to the audience and it says, this is what I've done, but now I'm all done. And it's over. The play is over. His magic is over. He actually, most of the time in this, he takes off his robes and sets them aside. And he puts his staff, and sometimes they actually will provide a staff he breaks the staff, or they set it so it looks like it cracks, but it's actually already split. But it's kind of a dramatic moment. But he says, now all my charms are o'erthrown, and what strength I have, mine own. So I don't have any magic left. and this strength is most faint. So think back to the poetry when we had, thou seest in me the twilight of such day. Thou seest in me the embers of a dying fire. This is the end of my life. So I'm giving up my magic, and for not much longer, I'm not going to be alive. So now 'tis true, I must be here confined by you or sent to Naples. And so, in other words, I could stay here or I could be sent off to Naples. Let me not, since I have my dukedom got and pardoned the deceiver, dwell in this bare island by your spell. And that's our spell. He's talking to us. So this play could go on and on as long as you're willing to sit here and trap me here. But let's end it. Let me go. Release me from my bands with the help of your good hands. And that means what? Let's clap. Gentle breath of yours my sails must fill, or else my project fails. In other words, cheer me on, or I won't have the wind to sail away. Now I want spirits. That means I don't have. Okay, I lack spirits to enforce, art to enchant, and my ending is despair unless I be relieved by prayer, which pierces so that it assaults mercy itself and frees all faults. In other words, I forgave all these people this stuff. Maybe you didn't love the play. Please be merciful and clap and cheer me on so that I don't despair at what I've created. This is a poet's line. This is the poet. I swear it feels like Shakespeare's talking. And he says, as you from crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free. So he frees his spirits, and then he asks us to free him, to let him go and allow this to end. It's a great ending, in my opinion. It makes me like, yeah, you want to clap, because it's like, yeah, this was, first of all, it is a cool story. It's a very unusual story. It's not one that, this was not a typical play. It's not like this is one of those generic, oh, everybody wrote a play about that. They didn't. Jordan's clapping. So the truth is that it feels real. It feels authentic. And his forgiveness feels the same way. Certainly Alonzo and he will probably be allies for the rest of their lives. And they will also be both parents to their kids, and their kids, hopefully they'll both support the kids in their marriage and their future life as well. So the prospects are good, but it was also a really entertaining story while it happened. And all the magic stuff that people at that time would have loved, but we would love it too. So I just wish there was a really good movie version of this. I would totally watch it. Do you guys have any questions, any lingering comments, anything at all? I mean, oh, so you liked it? Okay, good. So you did too. Okay, good. Did you? Is there any part of it that you just like, I didn't get? Well, I mean, this is one that it has drama in it, but and it also has humor, but I like the ending. For me, is more satisfying than some of the comedies. There's one comedy, well, it's more of like this. It's more of it's what is that one? Measure for Measure. And it ends with a marriage because the Duke was in disguise, and then he, helps out this woman who's going to be a nun. She's actually training to be a nun, and he helps save her from all sorts of bad things happening to her. And then at the end, he just says, "And I will marry her." Well, she was studying to be a nun, and so it's very dissatisfying because he doesn't even ask her if she'll marry him, and she doesn't ever say anything. And so you're like, was that supposed to happen or not? But this one is really Miriam I mean, Miranda really gets to pick Ferdinand. In fact, she's the one who proposes. Ferdinand absolutely adores Miranda. So there's so much hope in that future. Um, oh, I'm so glad you hung out with that. So did it worked for you? I'm just happy too. I was so scared when the first time I read this, well, when I watched it, because I hadn't read it yet. I was so afraid he wouldn't let the fairies go. That at the last moment he would, I knew it was probably a revenge play. I mean, I really didn't know Shakespeare that well at the time, but I knew he was probably going to get back at all these people because, American movies. And so I was surprised when he didn't, but I was really afraid he would never let go of that power because it's hard. It's hard to let go of power. And yet sometimes that's the only way to really live is to I mean, if you're always afraid of losing your power, then you become Macbeth, and that is not where you want to be. That's a dark play. I actually, Macbeth's one of my least favorite Shakespearean plays. So, but I'm glad you liked it. Any other lingering questions? Honestly, if you have questions about your papers, I'm trying to think of what's my favorite. Well, dude, that's hard. My favorite comedy is probably Much Ado About Nothing. If it isn't, because Much Ado has a very, very strong women in it, has a great speech by a woman. Um, Beatrice actually has a speech that starts with, "Oh God, that I were a man." And she wants to essentially avenge her wronged friend who's been, maligned. And it's just a great speech. But both people are very strong characters. Beatrice and Benedict are very strong characters, and yet they're kind of tricked into falling in love with each other. And that's cool. I like that. Much Ado Nothing is, yeah, definitely one of my favorites. I've never really seen a good production of it though. And I like Midsummer Night's Dream. I think it's hilarious. And but as far as tragedies, my favorite tragedies, I can't even pick one. I love Hamlet. It's probably my dearest, but I love Othello. I think Othello speaks to all sorts of things, jealousy and prejudice and everything else. It's just brilliant. And I love the character of Othello. And I love the character of Desdemona. In fact, I loved it so much, I wrote a play called Desdemona, and it was all about her and her journey. And it was totally different, but it put in a lot of the scenes that were missing in Othello. But it also had a courtesan in it and a bunch of most of the characters are female. But the truth is it's just, I mean, there are, I would just, if there's something you liked about this one, and I would just try out some other ones. I know that, like, if you want to see them, if you don't really want to read them, if it's just too hard, Addie and Jordan, you can always go see, like, there's so many film versions that are good. The best Hamlet is Kenneth Branagh's version. The best Henry V, only Henry V that I know of is Kenneth Branagh's version. No, there's an earlier one, Laurence Olivier. Don't watch that one. No, it's not good. Laurence Olivier's Hamlet is awful, in my opinion. It's unwatchable to me. But the Midsummer Night's Dream, the movie is okay, but the one in Central Park, which they still have the tapes rolling around, you can probably watch it on YouTube. Let me see if it's on YouTube. I'm gonna just see and look and see if we can find a Midsummer Night's Dream in Central Park. Uh, nope. Yep, that's the one. I think. I think that's the one. Oh, and now let's pause it for a second. I just want to see if it has William Hurt in it. If it's the one with, it probably is. This is probably the one with William Hurt in it as Oberon. And if that's the one, I'm just going to copy this. Yep, I think this is the one. And I'll put the link in here. And so you guys can watch this one. This is the best, like, I mean, I think it's a stage, yeah, because it's in Central Park. No thanks. Let me see. Yeah, I think this is the right one. I don't know. I'll know at the end. Just a second. Because oh yeah, it's before we get to Thisbe. There's the dog. Oh yeah, that's it. That is absolutely it. Now I can't, I've got to pause it because I don't want you to see it all. But that's the best version of that play. If you ever want to know, certain versions of what, or what's good, just ask. And if there's something you really want to try reading, you can always, I mean, even a year or two from now, email me and say, hey, now I finally have time because I finished my degree. This is what I'd like to do. What do you think? And I can recommend other stuff that's not Shakespeare too. So just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recorder since I put that in and it's an hour long. So any other